Hey class, welcome back. I have a new mic that I'm using today, and we're going to finish up chapter 4, our lecture. Let's go ahead and get started. So we were talking about impression management, which we've discussed quite a bit throughout the semester. You guys know a lot about that, just how we engage in impression management every single day of our lives. It's kind of interesting because, we're on this shelter-in-place order, and so our social interactions have changed dramatically, and much of what we're doing, for example, like we're doing class online and we're doing these lectures online. It's interesting how that has kind of changed the way that we manage people's impressions because we're not actually in the same room as the people that we're speaking to, the people that we're interacting with. Anyway, it just changes the dynamics quite a bit. So time and space, all of this matters quite a bit when we're looking at social life and we're looking at social interaction and so forth. Um, and so, when I started class last week, just to give you another example, I just went ahead and did my regular schedule. I got up in the morning and I drank some coffee. I did a little bit of work, jumped in the shower, had a t-shirt ironed, and put my work clothes on as if I was going to work, uh, even though I didn't step out the door. Um, it's the only way that I know how to do it. So anyway, it's just interesting. I could just, roll out of bed and I don't even need to take a shower or, braid my hair or whatever. I can just, jump in front of the computer. Um, but that's not what I typically do. So anyway, it's been interesting. So um, yeah, just don't read the notes on the right. So I'll read these lines. I have a 14-year-old son. Well, that's all right. I also have a dog. Oh, I'm sorry. So for a second, just try to think of what that conversation would mean. Again, don't look at my notes here. Um, so give you a second. And it's actually a conversation between a landlord and potential tenant. But if you were just to read it and you wouldn't know the context. I have a 14-year-old son. Well, that's all right. I also have a dog. Oh, I'm sorry. You kind of got to know the context of the conversation. Um, so context is everything. It's kind of the point here. Helps guide our communication, our context, the context of the communication that's taking place, or of the situation is super important for people to understand. And we kind of learn this through experience, so that way we can um, modify our behaviors, modify um, our language, so to speak. We might change the way that we speak depending on the context of the conversation, depending on who we're talking to, depending on the location, whether we're at work, whether we're at home. Ethnomethodology, this is the study of how people make sense of what others say and do in the course of day-to-day social interaction. This is, again, traced back to Garfinkel. Um, and I think that we talked a little bit about ethnomethodology, but basically, again, it's just a study of how, it's a systematic study or investigation of how we make sense out of our conversations. We don't really think about this sociologically in our everyday lives. But if you really, I mean, just for a second, you think about our social interactions and you think about how many different people that we interact with during the day, at least typically. I mean, now things have changed, right? But, we have these different social spaces that we occupy, whether it's work, whether it's home, whether it's a relationship. We go out on a date, we're out in public, we're in a private setting, we're with friends, we're with acquaintances, so on and so on and so on. There's so many different social contexts that the way that we communicate, the way that we speak to each other, the way that we interact, all of that will change, um, and can change in very, very dramatic ways. I don't think we talked about this slide right here. Maybe we did, or maybe I just told you to skip over it. But anyway, you can kind of see here how um, you can totally vandalize the conversation. You could break the rules of the conversation. And the easy way to do that is when somebody asks you how your day is going at the mall or at Trader Joe's or Vaughn's or Winco or Costco, wherever you're at, they're just being polite. They're engaging in customer service, general customer service relations, all of which is very different than if you were to go home from a long day at work and your spouse were to ask you, how was your day, or how's your day going? The context is completely different. Thus, the way that we act is different. So you can go ahead and vandalize the conversation. Somebody asks you that, and you can ask them, well, what do you mean exactly? Are you referring to um, my uh, God, I'm trying to think of a good example here. Well, let's just go ahead and read what we have. So, how are you? How am I in regard to what? My health, my finances, my schoolwork, my peace of mind. So, you could do this to me. Uh, when I ask you, hey, what's going on? How's everything going? And then you could say, well, do you really want to know? Well, let me tell you all about it. No, I really don't want to know. It's just more of a greeting, right? When I say, "Hey, what's up? How you doing?" It's more of a greeting than it is a question. But you can see how we could easily destroy a conversation depending on how we see it or how we view it. So context is incredibly meaningful. The social environment is very, very meaningful in terms of social interaction. And you guys kind of, I think you intuitively know that, but in sociology, this is something of great importance, and we like to look at how um, the social environment, the social context, how that can change the conversation dramatically. And again, interactional vandalism. That's what I'm talking about. The deliberate subversion of a conversation. Response cries. If you see somebody you haven't seen for a while and you go, ah, that's a response cry. Or ee, ooh, ah, yikes. So, anyway, they're not real words. They're exclamations or response cries. Personal space, very important. Eye contact, very important. Again, we talked about all that in the previous lecture. All right, this is where we left off, if I'm not mistaken. Bureaucracy and democracy, oligarchy. This is ruled by a small minority within an organization or society. I tend to argue with my students about this. Not argue in the sense like I'm having an argument, but I tend to argue that um, we are living in this type of bureaucratic system today. It's kind of an oligarchy. We have a small minority of people within society who get to make the majority of the rules. C. Wright Mills called these individuals the power elite. He argued that the power elite were your major corporations, obviously your top political officials, and the military. So that would be the power elite. And you can see how, again, very few people are making all the decisions right now in regards to this COVID-19 situation. It's not like we really have a say. There's just a small group of people. There's also a concept of the iron law of oligarchy, and this is the tendency of large organizations or major societies like ours that create these very powerful organizations like Congress, the military, or our banking system and how these people have willed incredible amounts of power. And in doing so, it makes, at least according to this perspective, it makes democracy very, very difficult. How can you really have a democratic society when you have very few people who control society? When you have very few people who make the decisions? And one of the consequences here of having a large society like our own, we often cede the power to a handful of people. And as a result, those handful of people get to make all the decisions, and we just kind of sit back and we just kind of hope that they make good decisions on our behalf. I'm going to take a drink of water. Um, anyway, it's definitely an interesting way of looking at it. But you think about the world's decisions are made just by a handful of people, and we might have the right to vote. We might be able to go to a town hall meeting. We might be able to, send emails, send letters to our congressmen, congresswoman. But how much power do we really have as individuals? And how much power do corporations, do these major banks have? Again, the power elite. Gender and organizations, the way women have been treated historically is something of interest, obviously, in the study of gender and feminist theory. Um, Women have often experienced a tremendous amount of sexism. Right now with the Me Too movement, Hollywood is really under the gun to change some of their ways. Um, and I'm sure the Harvey Weinstein conviction was a major victory that we've seen in Hollywood, at least with this push towards um, having less sexism, less gender discrimination in Hollywood. And hopefully that'll trickle down to the rest of society, and you'll see women are treated better in all organizations. The military is another good example as well, where women in high numbers now are going into the military, but the military historically has been a very hyper masculine organization, and so um, these encounters that women have in these organizations could be difficult. And I know that the military has high rates of sexual assault, sexual harassment, and rape. Those are issues that you guys can look up on your own time. Time and space, when and where events occur. Again, that has a big, huge impact on our interactions, depending on, if it's the morning time, hey, you probably shouldn't be drinking a Bud Light or taking shots of tequila. If you're at work and it's in the evening, maybe not a good idea to be taking shots of tequila. I mean, there's places and there's a time to be doing certain things, doing shots with your friends, and smoking a bowl if that's something that you do. Well, I don't even know about marijuana. Maybe people do wake up in the morning and smoke marijuana. I'm sure people rationalize and say, "Well, I'm taking my medicine." Um, but yeah, time and space, that says a lot about our conversations and how we interact and what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. Regionalization. This is the division of social life into different regional settings or zones. Again, home life versus work life, the different social environments, even at home. Like, the kitchen's meant for cooking. You're not going to be going to the bathroom and wash off your fruit and start dicing up your vegetables. That's done in the kitchen. The living room might be for relaxing. The bedroom might be only for sleep or for having sex. Yeah, so all of these different locations are all divided up, and there's certain things that we do in certain areas, and there's certain things that we just don't do. We're just like, that's weird. Why are you doing that here? And I can't even really think of anything, but like eating dinner, like you guys don't all, we don't all gather around uh, somebody's bed, right? The master bedroom for dinner. Maybe people do now. I don't know. The compulsion of proximity. This is the idea here that people when they're close to others, there's this like compulsion for us to want to speak to that person or interact with that person. It takes a lot of effort and work to kind of not speak to somebody. Depending on the situation. I mean, I guess if um, if you're in an elevator waiting to get on a subway, maybe in those situations you kind of know it's on. But even then, I mean, I was in New York and I was waiting to get on the subway, and I had all kinds of people come up to me and talk to me. Um, and I'm just like, I'm just trying to get on the subway, man. This isn't the time. um, and the internet's kind of confused things as well. I mean, you think about it, like the internet, we can speak to people, so who are not in the same room, might even be able to see them, and has this replaced kind of like the old school pre-internet interactions? Is it a healthy replacement just to have these interactions over social media, over Skype or Zoom? Like we're going to meet tomorrow having Zoom. I mean, is this really? I don't know. I feel at times so distant from all of you now. I mean, I'm talking to myself right here, and you guys are going to listen to this at a different time. And I don't know, it kind of sucks. It's a lot easier to lecture when I have an audience and I'm going through slides and I'm asking you questions, and I can kind of build on the lecture and I can kind of add examples, and you guys like spark uh, uh, topics that I can kind of speak off the cuff about, and none of that is happening right here. I got to come up with the topics. I got to come up with the examples, and it's kind of strange. So, but yeah, who knows about the internet? Going back to that, and who knows what that's doing to our interaction, and is it healthy for us to just be on social media on it all the time? And what about these internet trolls that are out there just trying to do harm to people? And you have these emotional assassins who just go out there and just they get online and they just attack people, or they're just looking for somebody to hate on, and so on and so on and so on. Um, but yeah, all of this is really interesting to us in sociology. Um, and yeah, so anyway, so let's read some of what I have here. Um, I mean, you think about again the way things were done in pre-modern times and how it's changed. And we didn't have clocks. I mean, the clock is ubiquitous now. It's like there's clocks everywhere. There's clocks in our phones. And some of you wear a watch, and you don't even need to wear a watch. You got your phone. You have your computer. There's a clock here. It's 8:24 p.m. So, what about the time before clocks? You know, I mean, the way we organized our day, way we organized our time is just so radically different. Who decided on breakfast? Where does breakfast come from? Or lunch and dinner? Why can't you just eat when you're hungry? I mean, think about it. Our ancestors sometimes didn't have food. That's why a lot of people are going to that, what do they call it, intermittent fasting, which is something that I do from time to time. Um, our ancestors didn't eat all the time. Maybe that's one of the reasons why our health is so poor. It's too much food. We could eat anywhere. Food is readily available. When is there not a good time to eat? People eat on the road when they're driving in their car. People eat at work. They eat on their break. They eat at lunchtime. They eat after work, before bed, midnight snack. um, and in pre-modern times, maybe there, maybe you went 24. It wasn't like people wanted to fast intermittently, but they didn't have a damn choice. Anyway, modern world has just changed everything, and who knows if it's a good thing. So, has social media improved social integration? That is something that we don't know. You might think it has. I don't know. Maybe in some ways it connects some of us, but there's many people argue that there's no substitute for human interaction, the interaction that you get when you're having a conversation with somebody who's sitting right next to you. But anyway, this stuff is really interesting. Again, the rules of social interaction when you're with your buddies and you're hanging out, when you guys are hanging out, you might say and do things that you wouldn't do when you're with your mom, or when you're with your wife, or when you're with your girlfriend, or when you're with another female, just a friend who's a female. And you think about that one young lady who just walked, oh man, I think for like 10 hours, and then she condensed her video and showed how many people, how many men, not people, how many men like catcalled her and said things to her or gawked at her. I don't know. It was very sad. And you can see this woman here walking by. Who knows what they're saying to her? And she's getting lunch, and she's probably like, "Hey, I just want to get back to work, or I want to go home, whatever." And here these guys are just staring at her, and probably really, really super uncomfortable. So women and men in public settings could be completely different. What men experience, what women experience. So gender is super, super significant in trying to understand social interaction. I mean, you can't ignore gender. There's no way. Race. Um, if you grow up in a poor community, you might be streetwise. You know where to be, where not to be. You know where um, maybe one gang is located, and just because you live on some other block, you can't drive down that street. I mean, some of the poor neighborhoods in South Central and Southern California. I mean, there's certain streets you just can't be. There's certain stores you can't walk into. It doesn't matter if you're a gang member or you're not a gang member. Um, you might know again how to handle some interaction with somebody who questions you, who interrogates you, or your interactions with police might be um, uh, discussed and dialogued about with your mother, with your father, with your friends, with your relatives, your brothers, your sisters, if we're again looking at race. Some of you are probably really street smart. Some of you are probably very naive, don't know anything about the streets. There are some people who are completely oblivious or walking their car at night and they just think, oh, nothing will ever happen to me. And there's other people who know, yeah, things can happen to you. And they're more aware. They know how not to get robbed. They know how not to get their car jacked. They know how not to be a target or a victim. And again, turning away from face to face interaction because we have all these devices. I don't like it. I don't know, it bothers me. That's why I have a no cell phone rule. Somebody asked me, I don't know if it was in my Tuesday, Thursday, Monday, Wednesday class, oh, do we have to put our cell phones away? And I laughed. And I said, yeah, you do. So put your cell phones away. Pay attention to our short Zoom meetings that we're going to have this week. Okay. All right. That's about it, you guys. It's chapter 4. So study chapter 3 and 4. Exam number 3 will be on chapter 3 and 4. I'll post the exam on Wednesday of this week. All right. Okie dokie. And I'll see you all on Monday morning, Tuesday morning, Tuesday afternoon, depending on what class you're in. All right. I hope you guys are doing well. Let's stay safe. Let's stay indoors. Let's not have any COVID-19 parties. Let's not do anything dumb like get together in a large group and have a rave or have a house party. Let's do our part. There's people out there on the front lines trying to fight this thing, working day and night to save people's lives, to make people comfortable. let's do our part to make it easier for them. And then we'll make it through this and we'll get back to a routine, hopefully, that resembles our pre COVID-19 society. At least that's what I'm hoping. So I'm going to sign out here or sign off here. Is it sign off? I think it's sign off or sign out. Sign off. I'm going to sign off. All right. See you this week. Take care. Listen to the lecture and prepare for tomorrow's class. Zoom. Let's do it.